Welcome back everyone, my name is Mike for the new folks, and today we're going to be walking through the rifle that Thomas Crook reportedly used to attempt to assassinate President Trump. This right here is pretty darn close to the rifle he actually used. There's going to be a couple differences, and I actually have a review up of the base rifle that he used. It was a DPMS AR-15, an Oracle, either A2 or A3, depending on which news source you actually see. And that base rifle, again, I did a full review in 2017, and we're going to kind of go back to that review several times during this video as well. What we have here is pretty darn close to how that rifle was modified, because one of the things for the new folks, again, not a lot of people may not know, the AR-15 is a very modular platform, and it seems that while that rifle was in the possession of the Crooks family, they did some modifications to it, and I guess we're just going to walk through that today. We're going to walk through the rifle tip to butt, go over some of the things we've learned, some of how that may impact what happened on that day, and basically just kind of what I think of the rifle overall for that intended application. Obviously, it's an application that we don't want to talk about, but it's history at this point, so it needs to be examined, and that's what we're going to do. Before we get into the rifle, I do want to establish that this video was recorded at roughly 6 p.m. on the 29th, so that way if any new information comes out after that, it will not obviously be in this video whenever it is actually published. So as of yesterday, the FBI actually published the photos of the rifle that was used. We have seen several screenshots. If you guys have watched my channel and all the videos I've done on the incident, I rolled in a bunch of different screenshots throughout the several videos that we've done of the rifle, offering some hypothesis as to what it could be. And one thing I definitely nailed right off the top was this optic. We will get to that a little bit later on, but let's kind of walk through what is going on with this rifle. Like, once again, I said it was a DPMS A3 or A2. That rifle has a 16-inch barrel chambered at 5.56. It has a carbine length gas system, and it has a 1 in 9 twist. Now that 1 in 9 twist may or may not play a role in the actual performance of the rounds down range. Just kind of depends on the ammo that he used. However, as of right now, we do not know the ammo, so let's stick with what we actually know, and that is the rifle from the photos. So if we zoom in and take a look at the rifle as the FBI presented it, out there on the end we do have an A2 flash hider on there. That is the most common muzzle device for any type of AR-15 on the planet. That actually is what it would come with from the factory, and in my opinion it's a very good muzzle device all around. I've talked about it many times. It does a decent job at hiding flash. Additionally, one thing it does is it has closed ports here on the bottom, so that way if you're firing from the prone, it's not going to kick up a lot of dust. Now in this particular situation, from what we understand, Mr. Crooks was in the prone on the roof. Very likely there was dust and things like that on the roof, so that would have prevented a lot of things from kicking up around him. In this case, that would have been advantageous for him and a disadvantage for those trying to locate where the shots were coming from. Continuing on back, we do have a 15-inch Aero Precision M-Lock free-floated handguard. So what this does is it offers the user the ability to do a lot of things. Number one, mount accessories like the sights that we'll talk about here in just a second. Additionally, it allows the barrel to free float, meaning that the handguard that would originally come on it would actually touch the barrel, and that would impact accuracy. With this handguard on there, it doesn't touch the barrel, and it allows it to be slightly more accurate. In general, a free-floated versus a non-free-floated AR-15, everything else being the same, the shooter, the ammo, the conditions, you're generally going to get about half-inch better groups at 100 yards with a free-floated handguard. However, one other thing it allows the shooter to do is just be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more ergonomic. And from what I understand, Mr. Crooks was 6'4", and as a taller guy, he very likely would have enjoyed a longer handguard on there. It just would have been a little bit more ergonomic for him. And one thing that we have to establish, I'm just going to assume that you guys have watched all of my Trump shooter videos, but for those of you who haven't, it's been established that in the year prior to the actual shooting, Mr. Crooks went to the range over 40 times to practice, and the majority of that was with this rifle in question. So the initial reports claiming that he was a poor shooter, didn't know what he was doing, the more evidence that has come out since then, it leads us to believe that that actually wasn't the case, and maybe he knew a thing or two. And one thing that I've not seen discussed a lot on the actual media reports of this rifle is the fact that up front there, if you actually look, he has a 1913 rail on there, just like we have here. What that's for the new folks, is to mount a bipod. And so the reason it's all the way out front like it is here is the more forward you can mount your bipod, the more stable your rifle will be when you're actually using it. And let me cut real quick, mount the bipod, because YouTube doesn't let us show modifications, and we'll be right back. Through the magic of video editing, we have mounted that bipod on there. I will tell you, it is extremely simple. It literally is just the throw of a lever. It's very easy to do. However, based on everything we know, he did not use a bipod in this instance. If he had, that would have increased the stability and made it more likely that he put rounds on target. So for whatever reason, he chose not to use a bipod, even though he had it set up to be able to quickly take one. What that tells us, at this point, we really don't know. If I had to guess, he probably just didn't have it in his backpack, or didn't have time or perceived that he had time to attach it when he was assembling it out of the backpack. But that definitely would have increased his hit probability if he had used it. But again, he did not use it based on what we know. And looking at the rifle, you also see these offset iron sights. A lot of folks out there who aren't gun folks are going to be confused by that. That said, people who are gun folks are also going to be confused by that. So typically what these offset iron sights are for is if you're using some sort of scope, a magnified optic, and then you need to switch over and do something quick, up close and personal. So for example, if this was a magnified scope that was zoomed in real far, but all of a sudden a threat popped up that was 50 yards, 25 yards away, what you do is just rotate the rifle, and then you can engage with these sights. Now the actual sights he had mounted up there were some Chinese special ones. I'm sure they work just fine, but these ones are a little bit higher quality. That said, they were in the deployed position as the rifle was found on scene anyway, which is very odd considering he had a one power optic, a red dot optic, which we will get to here in just a second. Another thing we want to talk about is that he does have a Magpul hand stop on his rifle. Again, I don't have the Magpul one. This is a B5 on there. And I actually mounted it in the exact position because it was on his rifle on the actual handguard. So if you actually look at the handguard, you have our quick detach sling point here, then that little half M-lock slot, full M-lock slot, and then right in the next one is where that hand stop is on his rifle, which again, as I mentioned earlier, several reports have said that he was 6'4" tall. And as somebody who's 6'4", I would think he would want it to be a little bit further out on the end. So that I do find that a little bit curious, especially since he had trained with the rifle a good bit, according to news reports. Additionally, one thing we note is that he very likely did not actually change the barrel on the rifle. When I say he, either him or his family member, whoever the rifle was in the possession of, because if you actually look at the position on the actual photo of the FBI, you can see that his gas block is right back here, and that gas block is indicative of a carbine length gas system. Now this one here has a mid-length gas system. It's a little bit of a longer gas system. What that does is allow a little bit softer recoil impulse. Additionally, it also, with a 16-inch barrel, makes it a little bit more reliable, but that is a video for another day. But as you guys can see in the review I did of the rifle and its base configuration, the ejection pattern there, and that was with M193 ammo that we were using throughout the majority of that, just 5.56 chambering, was going right around the 3 to 4 o'clock position in terms of ejection pattern. Every now and then it would go to the 2 o'clock position. That's important because if he was using similar ammo, you would be able to predict where the casings would be, the brass casings that would have come out, the 8 that he reportedly shot. So that is something to note. Again, it seems to be the original carbine length barrel. That said, the gas block is different if you actually zoom in on the rifle that the FBI is showing. He has a low profile gas block installed just like this one right here. And the original one came with that large gas block that was railed for a front sight. So these can be swapped out relatively easy. You just remove these 2 screws here on the bottom, loosen those up on the original gas block, pull it off, slide this one on, align your gas tube, and you are back in business. It's not something that is super difficult to do. You don't need to be a gunsmith or something like that to do it. That said, most AR novices wouldn't know how to do it either. So it does show that somebody who had this rifle did have some sort of knowledge in terms of how to add accessories. The same would be true for that free-floated handguard. You do have to remove the original barrel nut to actually put this one on there, the Aero Precision 15-inch M-lock handguard. So either it was given to a gunsmith for installation, or somebody who knew a thing or two about AR-15s put it on there. So it does tell us something about the rifle and who owned it. Before getting to the optic, I do want to thank the main channel sponsor, and that is Brownells. They have a ton of different stuff over there. Much of the stuff that you see here on this rifle, accessories, firearms parts, gunsmithing parts, they have all that over at Brownells. Big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel here. And then additionally, we talked about ammunition earlier. We still don't know what type of ammunition was fired. Reportedly, the FBI claims that they have done ballistics testing and matched the actual cases to the rifle. However, they have not shown any evidence of that. But if you guys are looking for ammo, Kerr Ammo is a great company, and they also sponsored this video. They're a family-owned business out of Texas. If you guys place an order over there before 2 p.m., it ships out the same day. All orders over $199 ship free. They have a new Instagram page as well, and there also is a discount code that will get you guys $5 off for your first order of $149 or more. Now back into the actual rifle itself. We do have a Holosun AEMS. Now these are red dot optics that come in 4 different configurations. So this one here is the AEMS, like the full featured version. And what this has here is a solar backup power there on the top. Now that's one of the reasons I was able to very quickly identify this in some of the earlier grainy pictures that we had seen of the rifle. That is pretty unique to the Holosun. It's not the only one that has it, but it's one of the few. Additionally, these also come in a core version. The core version doesn't have these flip up lens covers on there, and it also doesn't have the same reticle. Now, this has the donut of death reticle, meaning that we have a 2 MOA dot and a 65 MOA circle around it. Now, what does that mean in the context of the actual engagement that we're talking about today? Well, the shooter was reportedly somewhere around 130 to 145 yards away, depending on which news source you see and where you place his body and where you place Trump. That's a video for another day. But what that means is that with that 2 MOA dot, that's a 2-inch circle at 100 yards. At 130 yards, that dot would cover roughly 2.6 inches. So your human head is going to be, roughly 8 inches, depending on what angle you're looking from. Trump's big old red hat, "Make America Great Again," is going to be a great aiming reference point if that is what he was going for. Now, there's a lot of debate online whether or not he was going for a headshot or not. That is a video for another day, and we would need to know his zero, which the FBI has not released at this point, where the rifle was zeroed in terms of point of aim and point of impact. At this point, we don't know that, so we can only guess. However, one thing I will say is that reportedly he had been Googling various things based on the Butler rally and how far away President Trump would be. And if that was the case, one would think he would have picked a different optic, because this optic here is not exactly ideal for anything long range. Is it doable? Absolutely. And if you look at the first shot that he got off that hit President Trump in the ear, or first or second, if President Trump's head was turned in a different direction, he would quite literally be dead. So that was an effective shot. So people say, like, how did he miss? That was a chip shot. I'm not sure that's true. That said, he actually took an accurate shot that was lethal. It just so happened that President Trump turned at the right moment. So it really is kind of a crazy thing that happened in that way. That said, if he chose something else instead of this red dot at that distance, he probably would have had a better chance. So just to kind of compare, I'll roll in a couple photos here of this red dot optic here, focused on a shed that's about 130 yards away from where I took this photo. So that shed, again, where that dot is 130 yards away. Then I took this optic here, which is not a fancy optic at all. It's a primary arms first focal plane 1:8. It's roughly the same price point as this optic, so nothing cost prohibitive about it. And I just set it on 4. So I didn't max it out to 8. I just set it on 4 because there's a lot of 1:4 scopes out there as well. And I just wanted to show the difference in terms of precision that you get as a shooter looking through the 2 different optics. So we'll kind of roll them in side to side. But you can see there, if he had something like this on that rifle, very likely the outcome would be very different, and the political outcome that we would have today would also be very different. A lot of people have also hypothesized that he probably should have aimed for the torso. I have no idea what he should have done. I'm just glad that nobody, at least President Trump anyway, did not die. Unfortunately, people in the crowd did, of course. But loss was minimal compared to what it could have been with 8 shots going downrange from a rifle for sure. But yeah, that is the optic he used. It is a good optic. I have a full review on it. That said, it's definitely not the ideal optic for this engagement. Is it something that a trained shooter who visited the range 40 times in the past year could hit most of the time? Probably. However, you have to remember that rooftop, according to many reports, was roughly 100 degrees. He was in shorts and a t-shirt, and he had recently been startled by a police officer who came up over the edge. So he probably felt rushed, and he probably felt some stress. Those of you guys out there who are hunters will be familiar with the term buck fever. People will often blame their miss on getting so excited because they saw the deer in their sights and they just got a little amped and got a little jerky on the trigger. Well, take buck fever and then add in a police officer that you know is coming after you, and then add in the fact that you're shooting at the former president of the United States. I can imagine the stress levels were pretty high, as they should have been. So that could have also accounted for some of the erroneous shots that we did see fired. Continuing rearward, one thing to note is that the position of his rear offset iron sight is what I would consider to be the correct one in my opinion. So basically, if you take a look at it, it's going to be similar in terms of dimension to the one that we have here. And if you were to actually fold it down in this position, you still can easily access that charging handle. And if you look at the actual charging handle in the photo, it is a mil-spec charging handle just like this one, nothing fancy at all. And it still gives you room to get your fingers in there to easily grab and manipulate it. A lot of people who mount up their rear iron sight would mount it in one slot backwards, and what that would do is make it a little bit harder to actuate your charging handle. It's just one of those little things, but it's one thing that a lot of gun guys will notice for sure. Additionally, we have to talk about the stock. It was a Magpul CTR stock, which is this stock that we have right here. Very good stock. It's been around for a long time. This has been used throughout the global war on terror by lots of soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors, etc. Very, very popular stock, very good stock. What it allows you to do is adjust the length of pull of the actual trigger reach to you, the shooter, and it gives you about 4 inches of travel. Now, one thing the FBI director stated in front of Congress is that that was one of the primary reasons he was able to conceal it in a backpack. We'll get to that here in just a second, but I will just tell you that's somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're talking about, or someone who's trying to lead someone down a path that is a little bit erroneous. Now, if you actually look at the one that was on the FBI photo, one thing you'll note here is that this portion back here is completely blown out. Now, in my video that I put up yesterday, recorded 2 days ago before these photos came out, I was reading from Representative Higgins' report where he claimed that the stock had been hit and that the AR-15, 99% chance in his mind, had been rendered inoperable. Now, based on the photos that we see here from the FBI, as well as their written report, they claim the rifle was 100% operable. And in my hypothesis yesterday, in yesterday's video, or 2 days ago, depending on when you're watching this, I claimed that it was probably unlikely that that was the case as well, meaning that it was unlikely that the rifle had been damaged to the point of not being able to be used. And I will explain why here in just a second after we remove this stock. Again, we're going to jump cut because YouTube doesn't let us show you how to do this. We'll be right back. Through the magic of video editing, we have the stock off the rifle, and one thing you'll note is that this is a standard mil-spec extension. That is what was on the shooter's rifle as well, at least according to the reports. And one thing to note is that you have these little points here along the baseline, and what those are the different adjustment and lockup points. The one to the rear here, the furthest rear, is where that stock appeared to be, and once again, all reports seem to indicate that Mr. Crooks was 6'4", and if he was, very likely he would have had the stock retracted all the way back if he was shooting from the prone. That would be the most likely thing. And the position where this little piece right here, right above it, that's where it locks in, and that would be right there on the actual receiver extension. So for the other side, so you guys can see it, it would be right there, meaning that any portion of the stock beyond this that was actually shot would not impact the actual function of the gun. Through the magic of video editing, the stock is back on there. It's in its rearward most position. One thing to note that's interesting about the Magpul CTR stock is that, again, presuming this guy was someone who trained a lot with his rifle, he very likely would have had it in the locked position right there. And what that does is it minimizes the amount of play and wiggle on the stock. If you guys shoot a lot, you'll note that basically everything staying more stable just helps you increase your accuracy and consistency. However, all the photos that we see of it, it's not actually locked in place. That said, of the rooftop photos that we have seen, it's hard to tell because of the angle. Basically, all of the photos are from this angle right here. One thing you can tell though, if you kind of zoom in on one of the photos that we roll in here, there does appear to be some damage. It's not something I picked up on when I initially saw that photo, just because I assumed it was some sort of graininess that just was explained by the graininess. However, knowing what we know now and seeing the photos that we see there, it seems very consistent with the body cam footage. And I have no reason at this point to believe that the FBI doctored that for any type of reason. Now, how did that impact happen? Well, that's something to discuss here, and I need to correct one thing that I said in my previous video. I said that the local SWAT guy took a shot and then pumped his fist when he thought it actually made impact. That's actually not correct. One of the viewers pointed this out. I went back and rewatched that timeline. What ended up happening is that gentleman, the SWAT officer who took a shot at Crooks, fired the shot and was on his rifle, basically just like this, kind of assessing, seeing if Crooks would come back up. As we've shown before in yesterday's or 2 days ago video, depending on when you're watching this, Crooks sat back up. And at that point, the Secret Service reportedly counter sniper took the shot, the bullet impacted Crooks, and then the sniper raised his fist. So that is the order of events. I got that a little bit messed up yesterday, and we corrected it. Thank you to you guys who pointed that out in the video. Now, getting back to the damaged stock itself, the initial report from Representative Higgins stated that the SWAT guy took a shot. It hit the buttstock of the rifle. Fragmentation material went into the face of Crooks, and that is how the actual stock was damaged. However, one thing we've learned from the FBI's report since then, they claim essentially that the southernmost counter sniper from the Secret Service team took a shot. It entered through the cheek, exited out through here, basically right down this angle right here. And if that is the case and that is true, it's very likely that's where that stock would have actually been. Because again, if he was in the shooting position and the counter sniper round comes in here, comes out here, that's pretty much exactly where it would have impacted at this point. Unless we see the actual forensic photos of the side of his face, it's very hard to tell. We've seen some, of course we can't roll those in here on YouTube, but the ones we've seen have been not so great in terms of actual clarity. And as we know, his body was reportedly cremated as well, so hopefully they have good documented data on that, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to tell which shot actually damaged the actual stock. That said, at the end of the day, it does appear that the rifle was in functioning condition either way. So the reports that the nice shot is what stopped him from shooting, i.e. disabling the rifle, definitely appear not to be true. It appears that for whatever reason, he simply chose to stop firing after the 8th round. Before we separate the upper and lower and talk about the backpack storage, one thing I want to point out by the FBI's photo is the position of the bolt carrier group. So this is our bolt carrier group for those who are new here. This piece right here that reciprocates back and forth. It's also one of the reasons I thought that the report of the rifle being damaged yesterday probably wasn't the case. So in the actual photo, it is in the rearward position that we have it here. And the person who took the photo, the FBI forensics guy, they did not lock in your charging handle. So you get dinged for that, FBI forensics guy, lock in your charging handle. Anyway, so what you'll note there is the position of the bolt. So you can basically, from your angle right there, I should be rolling in photos, you should be able to basically just see that bolt face. And what that tells us is that in the forward locked back position, the rearward locked back position, it's able to lock into place and is in perfect functioning condition. Again, the FBI claims that the rifle functions 100% and that the actual buffer tube wasn't damaged. That photo lends more credence to that claim. Before moving on to the backpack, the storage, and the transportation element of this story, I do want to mention today in this video on YouTube and Rumble, we're just talking about the rifle. We're really not getting into too much more ancillary details. We've mentioned some that are relevant, but if they're not relevant, we're not going to mention them. We're just talking about the rifle and analysis of that. And then additionally, we are going to go over to Mug Club and do a separate video right after this for members only. And we're going to talk about the FBI, what they claimed in terms of motive, in terms of other details of other types of weapons that YouTube doesn't want us to discuss here on YouTube. We're going to talk about that over at our Mug Club. There should be a code here on your screen if you guys are interested in that. It will get you guys a free month of membership over there. And there's a bunch of other creators that are creating content over there. It's not just me. I'm the gun dork over there, but everybody else over there is funny and entertaining. I'm just the gun dork. But with that, let's get into the actual storage. So the FBI released a photo of the gun broken down into 2 pieces. And one thing I want to talk about here is going to be just the length and the storage of both. So right now we have the stock in the most rearward position. Once again, Christopher Wray claimed that the rifle had a collapsible stock, and that made a difference in terms of how concealable it was. As you can see, that is in the most collapsed position. And in no way does it matter at all, because the upper receiver, this portion right here, is still much longer. Now, in my original video, I think it was the second video I did in this series, where I talked about storing the rifle and how maybe he got it up there. At that point, all we had seen was the backpack that was on the roof based on body cam footage. So I didn't have the exact dimensions of it. I had to find a huge backpack that I had to actually conceal it in. Now this pack right here is from Vertex. I'm sure some of you guys know exactly what it is, the model. You can comment down below, but this is a very normal sized backpack. And as you can see, no matter how I try to put it in there at whatever angle, about 4 inches of the actual upper receiver is going to poke out. So that begs the question, how did he hide this rifle? From everything we've seen, from the videos I've seen so far, all of the footage shows him without a backpack until he gets up on the roof. Once we see him running on the roof, you can see him throw the backpack. So again, according to phone data that's been released online, there was at least 1 phone that went back and forth to this location, to his house, multiple times in the week prior to the actual shooting, to the actual event. So did he have the rifle stashed up on one of those little roof positions? There's the little hallway corridors that were below the roof line. It would have been hard to see if it was in those positions, kind of tucked away. Entirely possible. Did he have it stashed by one of the air conditioning units? Entirely possible. Once again, from everything we've seen and heard by all the reports, the area where the AGR building was not searched by the Secret Service prior to the event. Apparently they only did the sweep inside the fence line, and the AGR complex was outside the fence line, so no sweep was done according to everything we've seen so far. So it's entirely possible that he had a backpack just stashed away. Maybe he had a t-shirt or something like that put over the side of it to not draw attention to it, to not look like this, to not look like an AR-15 barrel. It's entirely possible. At this point, we just don't know, but one thing we do know is that in the backpack that he had, it just simply wasn't fully concealable in that configuration. So something else would have been done to camouflage it, if he camouflaged it at all. And again, the first time that we actually see him with a backpack and all the video evidence that we've seen so far is when he's on the roof and he's throwing the backpack up on the roof. So that is the collapsed position. That's what we know of it as of this point. There's one other thing I want to talk about here before we close the video out in terms of the actual rifle itself that may have had an impact on the actual rounds downrange. Not only was it a 1-in-9 twist, that absolutely could play a role depending on what ammunition was used. Again, we still don't know what was used. Unfortunately, we should know that. I don't know why we don't know that. But the barrel itself was 1-in-9 twist, 4140 steel, and it's Parkerized. It doesn't have a nitride finish. It doesn't have a chrome lining. Additionally, in my testing, what we found was vertical stringing after around 5 to 6 rapid fire shots in hot conditions. I tested that rifle during the summer, just like when this shooting happened. And what I found in my testing was after 5 or 6 shots, it would start vertically stringing and rounds would start to miss at distance. One thing I did notice with it versus some of like the higher end barrels that you'll see out there is once we started to get it to heat up, it would start to string vertically a little bit. So I was out there shooting at, I believe it was 270 yards or something, whatever I had the target set at, and I could shoot probably 6-7 rounds easily into it at a moderate succession, and then eventually it would start to walk up. You know, the 7th or 8th, 9th or 10th or whatever would miss, and it would miss high each time. So compared to something that has perhaps chrome lining or nitriding or just better stress relieving overall, kind of lacks a little bit there. Once again, folks, that footage you just saw was filmed in 2017. I had no way to know it would ever be relevant in the future. So for all the conspiracy theorists out there, I did not, go back in time and put that video up. It's been there the entire time. But yeah, the barrel itself, that could have explained some of the rounds going high that we saw there. Of course, added in with the stress of the shooter and all of the other variables. Who knows what happened, but at this point, we know more about the rifle, in my opinion, than we probably know about the shooter. So hopefully, especially after watching this video, you have a better understanding of the capabilities of the rifle that he had. Definitely a rifle that is capable of good accuracy in small quantities if you have a good shooter behind it. The optic definitely was a handicap for him versus other options that he could have chosen, but that's what he chose. And once again, he got a kill shot off. It just so happened that President Trump turned in just the right direction at just the right time, and he's still alive today. So there is that. And with that, guys, we're going to close the video out here on YouTube and Rumble. If you guys like the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're following me on all my different social media accounts that you see here on the bottom of your screen, because whenever new stuff comes up, like the photos of these rifles, it goes up on my socials first, because I can't make a full YouTube video immediately. I can immediately post to social medias and let you guys know the pertinent information you need to know about what went on. I'm going to keep covering this. Whether or not the mainstream media does is irrelevant. It is a very important story right now. In 2024, people always still talk about the assassination attempt of JFK, and I think this is going to be a very similar story that people are going to talk about for a long time, just like with the attempted assassination attempt of Reagan. It was not successful in that case, but it's still something that people cite all the time looking back, and I think the same is going to be the case 20, 30 years from now on this event. So it's good to have as much information about it as possible, and one of the beauties of living in the modern age is there's a lot of cameras that were rolling at the time, and it's much harder to censor information, so we can get better information out to everyone, which certainly is good. If you guys like the video, and again, hit the subscribe button. I don't think this will be the last one in the series. If you've done that and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel. Sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month. It has all of the videos since the previous month's email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant centering your eyes from my content. Additionally, we have a daily deals email. If any of this stuff goes on sale, it will be in the daily deals email. It has 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet. If the item, whatever it is in the email on that day, it's the cheapest I know of for that particular item on that particular day, I've already done the price comparisons for you, so that way it saves you guys some time and hopefully saves you some money as well. Additionally, lastly, we have an SMS service. You can sign up for that at the website here on your screen. At most 1 text a day. It's not super spammy. Typically, it's the best deal of the day. Sometimes it's a new video, but 1 text a day from me to you with no big tech giants censoring it. And that's pretty much all I got. Thank you all for watching. We'll see all of you over on Mug Club.